I'm Frederick Richter, representing the Stiftung Datenschutz, the German Foundation for Data Protection. So, Karin, is CDR just a new tool in the toolbox of public relations department, or is this something practical? Tell us what you do beside the GDPR on the ground, please.
Yeah, so thanks, Frederick, and thanks for invitation to this panel. I have to admit I'm a completely newcomer to Privacy Conference of Bitkom, yeah, so I'm a little bit nervous, yeah, because I'm responsible.
No need to at all.
No, I don't feel nervous. I'm responsible for the GDPR sales initiative, so I'm lucky I'm not responsible for IBM's readiness, yeah. So it's easier for me to talk here in this auditorium. And I first thought when I had to talk about corporate digital responsibility, does this really correspond to GDPR? But I will show you in some minutes it does. It does definitely. For IBM, the topic of digital responsibility has always been a key topic. We are not in the consumer business, as you all might know, but most of our, or many of our customers are in the consumer business. Yeah? So governmental customers are in the consumer business, yeah? and many others. So we have to prepare for them. Yeah? And we see this corporate responsibility not only in how to develop technology, but also how to use technology. Yeah? And that are the two areas. So our CEO announced, I think, several years, 2 or 3 years ago, our principles for trust and transparency. And they evolved somehow over the time. At this point in time, they consist of 2 main topics, main areas. The first area is all about data and data insights. And we say the data of our customer belongs to our customer, and also the insights derived from the data belongs to our customers, and they are not relieved and our customers don't need to relinquish the right to their data or the insights relieved from the data to benefit from our solutions. We are fully committed to protect the data privacy of our customers' data, and that's the reason why we started with the GDPR program. It's a worldwide program, yeah. It's about readiness to get IBM ready for GDPR, and it started more than 2 years ago. It's a worldwide program, and it was run worldwide in 170 countries, all the countries where we do have IBM subsidiaries, not only in Europe. And what did we do there? We developed our own methods, and we developed our practices to make our company ready. And we implemented our own software solutions. We expanded the capabilities of those solutions and implemented it in our own company. So we can now really say we drink our own champagne. And with all this expertise, we can now support our customers to get there. I think most of you were here today in the morning when Susanne Demel told us there was a new Bitkom survey issued, and as I remember correctly, 25% of customers can say they are really ready. Yeah? So I think there is enough potential for many of the companies here to support our customers. Yeah? And we feel that many customers at the moment are on the point that they start with the automation of the data subject rights, for example. Yeah? Many have the issue of data discovery, especially in the area of unstructured data. Many have issues with consent management. Yeah? How do I manage this in one place and keep the overview? Yeah? And also about data breach reporting. Yeah? So these are the issues that we see that our customers are facing. Yeah? So teams around IBM are there to support them, and we're really interested to stay in contact with you or get in contact with you maybe later at the networking. Now I would like to turn to the second big topic. The second big topic is around new technology and systems like artificial intelligence. We had several speeches today around that, and what we try to do is we try to get more transparency in those systems, because many of our customers say that they are missing trust in those systems because they are not explainable. Yeah? And we believe if we make them explainable, and we just announced very recently a new cloud-based software service which explains how AI decisions are reached and flags and helps to mitigate bias. Yeah? And we now start to propose this to our customers, yeah? Because we hear from Gartner that 85% of CIOs want to pilot AI programs. IDC shows that 75% of commercial enterprises will use AI in the next 5 years. And we have issued also a study from our IBM Institute for Business Value, which say the same. And they say the greatest barriers are lack of people and skills to work with those systems. And the second is trust. Trust is missing, and fear not to be compliant. And this is something we together have to overcome, and where we need to support our customers.
When people listen to us, perhaps it's in their mind that they think, let's call it corporate data responsibility, because it seems to be all about data. Matthias, is our view a bit too narrow? Do we have to think in other categories than, do we use too much data, or perhaps we should beneath the bar what is allowed? Do we have to think in a broader view? What makes digital more than data for you in this notion?
That's pretty hard to answer. I'll think about it. I'll make an attempt, because when we are talking about corporate digital responsibility, there's the reason why it's called that, because we already have corporate social responsibility, yeah. So there is something that is already established, and that is criticized a lot, because in many cases corporate social responsibility is nothing else but whitewashing. You have companies that do things that customers don't really like, so what they do is they invent a program for corporate social responsibility, and they spend money on some civil society organizations, or they spend money on the environment or something like that to give the company a better image. It can be in completely unrelated fields. It's just about giving the company an image that they can convey to the public, so that people don't react harshly when something comes up that is not in compliance with the law, or is not in compliance with people's understanding of how a company should behave. That is one way to see it. On the other hand, of course, there are lots of companies who mean what they are doing, in the sense that they say we do have an ethical obligation, if we live in a society, to share the duties that we think companies should have. We give people jobs, they pay taxes, we pay taxes, and so on and so forth. So I think what's really important is that this idea of responsibility, and here I wouldn't make a difference anymore whether it's social responsibility, digital responsibility, or data responsibility, is that you are consistent with what you're saying on that responsibility side. If you have a program, CSR, CDR, whatever, and you're making claims, then you have to be consistent with these claims in the practice that your company is showing.
Yeah, but how much are these claims worth when there's no independent third party checking if you fulfill what you claim?
Of course, I mean that is one of the big issues, and it's a big issue in privacy and data protection. It's also a big issue in AI and whether that is used ethically. Part of the reason why AlgorithmWatch exists is exactly that. You know, we are a civil society organization that wants to hold companies accountable for what they're doing, in the sense that we would like to explain what they're doing. We would like people to understand better what they're doing. And of course, if someone behaves in a way that we think is problematic, and problematic is a wide range of things, I won't go into detail right now, then we would like to point the finger at them and say, is there a need to change something here? But of course, I mean, AlgorithmWatch has existed for 2 years. We do have funding, but we are 4-5 people, all with part-time jobs. Now, what can you expect? Can we hold all these companies accountable, IBM and Microsoft and Google and Facebook and so on and so forth? Of course, there are other ways to do that. There's journalism, there's government, there's oversight institutions, and I think all of that has to work together. And with privacy, we already have years and years of experience. And with we call it automated decision making, because we don't want to focus so much on AI, because no one can really say what AI is. But what we say is, if there is automated decision making in relevant fields that have an impact on the individual or society, then we also need to have these oversight mechanisms. And we are just right now debating, not just today, but everywhere in these different conferences and in research projects, what this exactly means. But we are at the beginning.
Is transparency, we have a question right there.
Yeah, one question if I may. What is the difference between compliance and corporate digital responsibility? Because if you say that you're aiming at processing data in a transparent and fair and comprehensible manner, I mean, that's in the GDPR, that's nothing new, and I don't think that's, you know, particularly rewardable, because it's a legal obligation. So I would like to understand, I had actually understood Mr. Billen to say that ethics and corporate digital responsibility is something more. Yeah, more than just compliance. It's hard enough to comply. So, yeah, could you please explain what the additional layer is?
I think to comply with law is something that everybody could expect. All of us have to respect law, I think just now it's really a hard job for many companies to comply with the GDPR. But as in corporate social responsibility, it's always mean it's more than it's asked by law. It's about voluntary activities that could be, let's say, digital education, digital inclusion. That could be something that a company who is offering smartphones is not only selling them, but is take a decision to that they are responsible also for data security issues. So it's more than law. And we have seen on the corporate social responsibility activities that companies in Germany or in other part of the world have started to analyze their supply chain and have developed code of conduct that they would and that they feel responsible for good wages in countries like China or India, that they feel a responsibility that no dangerous chemicals would be part of the production process. So it's, let's say, complying the law plus. And that could be very different from company to company. And what we've seen, I mean, CSR is something that has a history of 10, 20 years. It's a very good organized by traders and by many other companies. But the digital scene of companies is quite different. We have some big players, and we have thousands of one-man or one-woman companies of startups. And when we think about how could we start a discussion that people think about responsibility. I think a government cannot just decide everybody has to be responsible. That will not work. So we had to find ways to encourage people to develop and connect people to demonstrate what could be best practice, to talk about things everybody could do. And that could help to create services and products where privacy or responsibility is part of the design. To compare it with the environmental sector, we start environmental policy by asking for end-of-pipe technologies. That was very costly. To have power stations that have a high level of emissions and to try to build up emission cleaning parts to solve the problem. I think it's always better to have answers when you are starting to design a product or a service. And therefore, the discussion about corporate digital responsibility is just trying to spread an idea that everybody who is developing, who's offering services, should ask himself, what can I do? Are there pieces of work I can do? Concerning security, concerning protection, concerning fair deal, concerning transparency, and that's what I mean. It's building up more or less a movement within the companies to think and to reflect ethics and to include it in their activities.
You mentioned the best practice. Karin, do you see any best practice yet in your sector or?
Yeah, I think I have a very good example because I'm now with IBM for more than 20 years. Yeah? And referring to your question, I have a very good best practice because we have every year, every employee has to run through the business conduct guidelines. Yeah? And in the business conduct guidelines, you find a lot of let's say, guidelines which are not necessarily legal requirements, but a lot about ethics and how we behave and how we behave versus our customers, our partners. So I think this is a very good example and not a really new one.
But what about your competitors? Do they orientate at your example? What do they do?
I'm not so deep in the.
You don't have to mention any names. But
no, I think most of the American companies, they are very similar to IBM. What they have also their guidelines, their rules. So to be honest, I mean we are best. That's clear. But
yeah, Gerd, you said that not today, but in another point, that it's not good in your view when rules are found in communities of just one enterprise or one branch. They have to be set up in democratic ways. Could the state do anything with CDR by not guiding companies, but to induce the development? What can you do from the ministry to foster this CDR thing?
We are having talks and we try to learn in the current stage, and the next stage will be to see which other companies are interested in that kind of dialogue. And my vision is to have a kind of platform or to have a bigger conference to exchange ideas. And to include stakeholders like consumer organizations, like civil society organizations, to listen what is the society expecting from the government, but also what is society expecting from a company. So it's a lot about listening and identifying issues that could be important, and then the companies have to decide what has priority, what is not priority, and what could be their reactions. And what you mentioned is, let's say, that's part of the last wave of digitalization when international companies thought they are the world lawmakers. They call it community standards. but that it's not law. I mean, Facebook can develop community standards, that's fine. But laws have to be made by parliaments. Laws have to be, there must always be a chance that somebody who's not happy with the law can go to a court and try to get in other decisions. And that was the debate we have, especially with social networks. And I think there is a need for maybe in some parts on the sales law, for example, to adopt it to new developments. But as I mentioned, we are now, for the next 3 to 5 years, we are now in the period. But as we see now, there is not that real need to have totally new laws or to have a radical change in laws. If it comes to the famous artificial intelligence, I mean, at the end, there is no chance to bring a machine to the court. We always will ask that some real person is responsible for running the business, and he or she will be responsible for the results, and that we will not change. That's the principle of our everyday life. We have to sort what does it mean, but if I hear, oh, artificial intelligence means the machines can take decisions, we even don't know what will happen in the machine, sorry, then you cannot offer it to the public. You have to develop safeguards, you have to include trust, you have to include mechanisms that maybe moral and ethics is part of the machine itself. I had a very nice example this morning where I think it's now my 3rd conference today, and there was a professor who talked about moral decisions of products, and the example was the Saugroboter. What is the English name for Saugroboter? A vacuum cleaner roboter. Is it okay that a vacuum cleaner roboter will pick up insects, or should he risk? Yeah, it's a moral decision. And what kind of insects should he include, and what kind of insect he shouldn't include? So it's a very easy example that in many things we think it's not a moral decision. It's a decision. On the next level, let's say autonomous driving, there are much more moral decisions a machine maybe has to do, or the driver has to decide. So I really appreciate the advantages robotic could have for us. I think there are a lot of chances. So I'm not against technical developments. But we have to ask some of the questions and find some solutions.
Let's talk about transparency, because transparency is always said to be the golden way to create trust. But concerning algorithms, is there a way to make algorithmic decisions and the ethical background transparent to consumers without long explanations and without deep knowledge concerning technical issues on the side of the consumers?
Well, there's a chance to do that, and of course we should take that chance. But transparency in itself is very undefined. Everyone has a different idea of transparency when they hear the word. Some think that the code of the algorithm needs to be put into the open. Someone else says that's neither sufficient nor necessary. It's not necessary because it's a logic behind the system, it's the data that is being used, that you can't make an assessment from looking at the code alone what this entire system is doing. I agree with that. It's not sufficient because exactly if you only look at the code of something, you don't know what's going on, right? So we have to develop ideas of what transparency, or criteria of what transparency actually means. And mostly, or we are now at the point at where we would argue that transparency is very, very important when it comes to the logic of the system, so that people can understand what is actually going on, starting with, is there automated decision-making or decision support actually part of this system here? You know, that you have a any kind of flag that tells you that this is going on. Up to a point where we have to have a certain cascade of organizations that are able and willing and also have the authority to look at this in more detail, because we cannot accept consumers. I don't even think that we can accept companies to be able to completely understand in that way the technology that is being offered to them. I mean, this is Bitkom here. This is not so much focused on the consumer in the end, but this applies to B2B as well. We have lots of platforms that offer AI solutions that can be incorporated in other products. Now, as far as I know, and I talk to a lot of people about this, we don't have any adequate tools. There are tools, but I argue here that we don't have any adequate tools that enable companies to really understand what modular solutions are offered to them, what kind of accuracy they have, what kind of logic is behind that, what kind of model went into that, and so and so. So that in the end means that companies who use these AI pieces in their products that they're then offering to someone else don't really know what's going on in the background. So that's why I'm saying, I mean, this is it's a weak answer in the sense that I say we don't really know what transparency means, but of course it's a strong answer in the sense that, yes, we need transparency, but we have to define exactly what we mean by transparency, and it's at the same time less and much more than what most people think about when they hear transparency. Because forget about the lines of code, think more about the system and how it is created, how it is developed, and even how it is deployed. You know, we have to make informed decisions about what kind of automated decision making or decision support systems do we want to use for certain things. Just one example and then I'll end. We had a story a couple of months ago on our website of the so-called SYRI system, SYRI. That's a system that is being used in the Netherlands. I'm not talking about China. That is used to score citizens to find out, with lots of data that is fed into that, data from the public sector, not private companies, data from the public sector, to find out whether there is welfare fraud. Right? It's not employed in the Netherlands countrywide on a permanent basis, but as a community, a city or a county, you can ask at a certain organization, can we use the system to find out what is going on in our community and probably change what is going on. Now, I'm not saying that this is a bad development. What I am saying is we need to put a lot of thought into that, why we want, if we want systems to be able to do that and be used for this kind of analysis and decision making.
Well, on the other hand, yes, please.
Sorry, referring to your statement, there is no software, there is no technology which is able to really look into the algorithm and find out what's going on there. I mean, we just announced a solution which goes into that direction, and I'm sure technology will be able to solve this in, I don't know, 1 year, 2 years. I'm quite sure technology will not be the issue. I think, as you said, I think the real issue is the ethics, the rules concerning the ethics, how to use this technology, yeah? And I think this will be the issue. And there, I understand that on the EU level, there's a commission now on a very high level basis talking about ethics connected with AI, yeah? And I think that's the right approach, yeah? To get this on international level, to get this into the countries with the public authorities, and the private companies, yeah, to agree on those ethics. Yeah. Okay, sorry.
Probably we misunderstood each other. I'm not saying that technology cannot be part of the solution. There is this idea of algorithms watching algorithms, and there is something to it. But the thing is that, and I also agree with what Gerd Billen said, that of course we need to look at ethical decisions that are being made here. But the ethical decision is not being made by a machine and will never be made by a machine. So whether that robot, that vacuum cleaning robot, is sucking in a spider and not sucking in the, I don't know, butterfly, that is not a decision. That is a decision in the sense that, oh, I think this is a butterfly, so I will not suck it in. That is what the technology, the decision that technology
programmed by man.
Makes. Yes, yeah. But the decision that the technology makes is not, I do not suck in the butterfly because I think this is unethical. This will always remain a human decision.
But I mean, what could happen if that you have a robot in a couple of years who's telling you, Matthias, you're drinking too much. Sorry, you had 2 beers, now it's finished. So maybe it's not such a good idea to have too much ethics in the robots that will try to make us better than we are.
That's one of the examples where I would argue this should not be deployed, that kind of technology. And it's like it's a funny example, but of course you refer to it in your introductory statement. It's also a very real example when we're talking about insurance schemes and insurance companies trying to find out how compliant, there's the word, how compliant people are with their health regime. And if they're not compliant with their insurance company's health regime, then they have to pay a high premium. And I would argue, whereas, for example, it's interesting with car insurance, driver insurance, we seem to be okay with something like that, tailored to the individual person. When it comes to health insurance, so far we are not willing to accept that. I hope that it'll stay that way, but society is changing.
In the end, we have to say self-determined and independent. But I wanted to ask you, Karin, what do you think makes companies put great efforts and manpower in corporate digital responsibility? Is it good reputation in the media? Is it consumers asking the company what they do above compliance? What is it? You don't have to talk of IBM. What's the main incentive?
Difficult question. I'm looking for a short answer because everybody's sitting and I think it's at the end it's to generate trust at the customer side, because you need the trust from a customer that he buys at your company. So I think that's my personal opinion on that. Yeah. So it's business at the end, yeah.
Okay. Is there some question from the audience in the end? Otherwise we would... Oh, yes, at the back here.
Yeah, one short question. I'm interested in this robot thing again. If I understood it correctly, Spielkamp, you were saying that it's actually the implicit human decision whether the robot sucks in the spider and not the butterfly. But what about the robot that takes this decision from artificial intelligence, or seeing that the human would always suck in the spider and not the butterfly? Would that change it, your assessment?
I don't know whether you're referring to the experiment that is being done at MIT, where they have this website where people can go and then they are shown a simulation of a car and a decision that the driver needs to make. And then, we're all sick of the trolley problem, at these conferences where this is debated. So you have that car and it needs to decide whether it runs over the old lady or the 3 young children, right? And how is it going to make that ethical decision? Well, it's not going to make that ethical decision at all. It's exactly as you said. The ethical decision is always made at a different point in this development, right? Anyway, it's a dilemma. So dilemma is called a dilemma because we don't have a good solution to that, right? Not as humans, and neither will have the machine. Now, coming back to the question, does it make a difference whether that machine has learned that from human behavior? Well, in a sense, it doesn't make a difference, because then we would have told the system, learn from what humans are doing and assume that this is ethical decisions that they're making, which is wrong. You know, the fact that we act in a certain way does not mean that we act ethically. So I would say if someone had programmed this in this way that you described, they would have made they would have made a fallacy.
So now, everybody, let us all feel very happy that we are not the spider facing the robot, sucking us in. Perhaps we all should suck in some pretzel at the basement, but do it responsibly. We thank you very much. Thank you for your speech here.